Now 4 o'clock. I call the regular library board of trustees meeting for April to order. Our meeting begins with public comment, and as a reminder, with public comment, speakers are no person shall be permitted to speak unless they have entered their full name and city of residence on provided sign-in sheet. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Groups representing a consistent viewpoint are strongly encouraged to select one spokesperson. So today, the only person we have signed up is Mariana Cochran from Rathdrum.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? Whether we're paid staff, unpaid, appointed library board members, or concerned citizens, we're all here today because we recognize the impact libraries can have on our communities. It was utterly fitting that during National Library Week, our governor signed into law the Children's School and Library Protection Act, a monumental step forward for kids in our libraries. However, let's set the record straight regarding an April 11th Coeur d'Alene Press article about this new law. CLN's director Eccles laughably claimed CLN to be, quote, ahead of or in front of library and community issues, unquote. In fact, only after over a year and a half of a vociferous and unrelenting public pressure campaign at CLN and, quote, the theatrics of reading passages out loud, unquote, as Chairman Windisch asserts, plus the multiple denials by CLN's board. Amazingly, a revised policy was passed one day before the election filing deadline for the 2 trustees running for re-election. Meanwhile, at Coeur d'Alene Library, it was business as usual, filling the shelves with what Chairman Windisch blatantly avoided mentioning in the press article, gratuitous graphic sexually explicit materials for minors. The CDA Library Board Director Michael Priest and YA librarian Angela Flock remained entrenched despite repeated public petitioning for 3 years. But I almost forgot you're deigning to revise the challenge documents so your ILA and ICL overlords could continue to be cowed to under the guise of responding to public pushback. So Clean Books for Kids has made the Coeur d'Alene Library famous or infamous by spreading the word about a mere sliver of what's been found in your stacks. I noticed last night that one of these books, which CDA carried, Let's Talk About It, with multiple graphics of masturbation and pornography, has already been removed from your collection. But per this archive screenshot of the filing, it had 4 holds. So there was demand for it, despite that it was removed. Interesting. Bottom line, irrespective of ignored emails or inadequate responses, per the new Children's School and Library Protection Act as of July 1st, 2024, the CDA library is statutorily mandated to reassess their collection for minors. On our website, Clean Books for Kids has provided you a head start identifying those materials by documenting a list of many dozens of books within your collection that meet these new requirements. Of course, there will be pushback of supposed discrimination against the LGBT faction. That's a red herring. It's ironic that community fought so hard for so many years for equal representation, and they have it. Yet when the mandate is equally applied to heterosexual and homosexual materials for minors, the gay community claims victimhood. Nevertheless, sexually explicit is simply and exactly that, regardless of persuasion. There's no carve out for any faction. So you can continue to spin, obfuscate, condescend, and ignore patrons, but you cannot ignore the law. Patrons, parents, and concerned citizens will continue to be vigilant to ensure this new law is implemented.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are moving on to the consent calendar. I will entertain a motion regarding that. Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? In the consent
I
calendar.
had quite one question.
Yes.
It's just a clarification question. Under, actually, if it's in our budget, but it's this year's budget. So would that be under the consent calendar or under the discussion of the budget?
Yeah, so if we're talking about this year's budget, the financials are in the consent calendar.
Okay, so then I'm in the right place. Um, there is a amount from a federal grant of $38,983 that hasn't been spent yet in this year's budget. And I assume I made up what I thought it might be going, assigned to maybe the HVAC system or one of the major expenditures that had to happen for the library, but I didn't really know.
Yeah, so that one, I think I've explained before.
Oh, probably, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. It's confusing. So those were American, what is it, ARPA, or American Rescue Act? Is that it? Whatever it is, ARPA, I think you're all familiar with. Those were funds that were granted to the city way back during the COVID pandemic, that were left over, and the city decided to spend those funds on bonuses for full-time, non-exempt employees.
All right.
Why it's showing up not spent in the budget, I'm not quite sure, because I'm pretty sure all the staff who received a bonus received them the first paycheck of the new fiscal year. So that's a question for city finance that I can dig.
So you
see
could
what's-
let us know, I'd like to know.
Sure, yeah, next meeting I can follow up on that one. But those funds in the federal grant column, that's what they were assigned to.
Okay.
I just have one question about that, the statistics. There are a lot of red under the IT, and we know why, because we were hacked. But is there a way to put notes in those so that when we look back and try to determine why one thing happened years later, that it can be noted in there, that that's.
Yeah, I could put some kind of asterisk or something like that, and then something at the bottom. I'm really running out of space in that stats. I think I'm at maximum,
Yeah.
but I can play around the margins maybe and trying to fit in, yeah, just the
I
numbers.
just, that one is clear to us now and probably won't be asked later, but I was just thinking there are certain things
Right.
that influence the statistics.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, as to why we had no Wi-Fi logins or computer use during the month of
That's why.
March, yeah, I get it.
I guess I had one more thing. Under the training budget, I noticed that there was 1,000, but it was 100% of the training budget still available. And I know we've done a superb job of using online training, which hasn't drained that budget. But I hate to see it sitting there not used before the fiscal year ends, because it's hard to justify amounts to the city if we don't use it. And just the cost of, even if everything is paid for, let's say someone's scholarship to go to a conference, the travel expense, and sometimes just meals and travel, whatever. And I hope we can spend that money in a very, I want to, of course, be judicious. I don't want to overspend money we don't need to spend, but it's hard to get that money for a library. And I don't want to lose it because there's a track of not using it for 2 or 3 years or something.
Yeah, I think we're not alone among the city departments. I think a lot of city departments aren't doing as much training, sending people to training, although that might be changing. I'm pretty sure we're got a couple scheduled and coming up, sending people off to conference. So far we've only spent $281 out of that 5,000. Charlie recently went to Boise for a conference, but again, what we're encountering is the Idaho Commission for Libraries pretty much paid for the whole thing.
Right.
So we're always going to take that opportunity if it's offered.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's
Absolutely.
kind
We
of
want
double
to.
edged sword.
Right, if there's no further discussion, we are voting on approving the consent calendar as presented. All in favor? All those opposed? The consent calendar passes as presented. On to the director's report. Michael.
Right, it's just a few things. The big thing up the top is that the Cooperative Information Network, so CIN, has agreed to finance Aspen Discovery. So Aspen Discovery it's hard to describe when you're not in the library field, but it's a new catalog for the public side that is kind of like a one-stop shop. So right now we have patrons, if they want books, DVDs, or audiobooks, they have to go to our CIN catalog. If they want ebooks, they have to go to Overdrive or Libby. What this does is it pushes everything together on the same platform, and patrons can see everything we have, both the physical items, digital items, and be able to request, place holds, access those titles through this one website, one catalog. So it's an exciting tool. Another aspect about it is it created, not only is a website catalog, it is also an app. And our patrons have been asking for an app for a long time. Most people are accessing our catalog or the library in general on your phone or mobile device. So it really is suited to that moving forward. So it's a big opportunity for us to really get with the times. And I'm happy to say that CIN, as a collective, have agreed to pursue it, which gives us, as the consortium, it does save costs for us. We were looking, if we were going to go alone, at about $12,000. If we're going as a consortium, it halves it pretty much to $6,000. So it's a good thing that the consortium has agreed to go in on it. Yeah, I think that's it for now. There's a couple other things later that the friends were involved with, but I'll leave it there unless there's any questions.
When will it launch?
It's a long implementation
Okay.
period. We're thinking October at the earliest. We're about to have a call with the Aspen Discovery people and map it out as to how we're going to see.
October will be here sooner than
Well, true.
we realize.
Steve.
Will Christopher be able to maintain it, and keep it running?
Yeah, it's pretty self-contained. It's basically they give us a platform that looks like similar platforms. So they're already dealing with a lot of libraries, particularly libraries that have Coeur. So they're well versed in what we need to do. So they have they have a template catalog, and we can customize it to a degree, but it's the guts of it are pretty much the same as everything they offer every other library, and they hand over the keys to us to maintain it moving forward. They still provide support moving forward. That's part of the contract, but it is fairly customizable for us and apparently easy to use.
And Christopher probably had a chance to do some serious looking at it. before
Yeah,
he
he's
got
very
this far.
excited about it. It was he kind of pushed us in this direction. He found it. He really did a deep dive on it and thinks it's a good choice. So he took his advice to heart. Okay, so the lower level art project is moving forward. I can't remember which group I've updated about this now, but I think this is the first time I may be telling you as a group about this. So in your packets, you will see a picture of the design. This is just the initial concept. So we have met with the artist. We did form a subcommittee. So the subcommittee included the donor, Paul Fleschner, included Kevin Cole from Architects West, the original architects of the building. Ayla was there, and Melissa was there as well. So they formed the committee to select the artist. We have 77 applicants for this particular project. It was flown as an $18,000 project. Narrowed it down to 5 finalists. Pete Goldlust of Eugene was selected as the finalist. This was his concept. I've got a whole lot more as a packet that he put together. I'll pass it around. So this was the concept he presented in his application. We really liked it a lot, but we have had the opportunity since to talk to Pete and narrow it down to the kinds of things we would like to see on the building in terms of which animals or themes he's presenting. Also, a degree of signage. The whole idea of this project was to draw attention to the children's library underneath on the park side. So to have some kind of signage, children's library or something to that effect, just to really hit it home as to why we're doing this. So I think they were productive, the first conversations. And so Pete has until the end of May to present his final design. And then it's a matter of maybe fine tuning that a little bit more and then moving forward with a contract to fabricate and install the artwork. And he thinks he could probably get it done around August, which is good. We were thinking it could be September, October. We're willing to wait that long, but he's pretty gung ho about getting it done soon.
Could be a reveal for the Mudgee and Millie part, or birthday party. That would be
Yeah.
first part of September.
Yeah, if it'll time that.
Birthday party. We're not having
No,
one.
they don't.
Oh, that's right.
I know they didn't last
Yeah.
year. I just thought maybe it was that 1 year. Okay.
We'll have to have a different kind of party.
Okay.
Yeah, it will be an invite.
A good
For sure.
excuse to have a party. Yeah.
And the one last thing, which I did include in the packets, came in, I think it was yesterday or Monday. So the Idaho Community Foundation, don't know if you're familiar with them, they have selected the library as one of the featured nonprofits in their, what they call the giving station. So they describe it as a real vending machine, but instead of dispensing snacks and drinks, it makes grants to Idaho nonprofits. So as I understand it, at their event, which is going to be on May 23rd at the Hagedorn Event Center, they'll have this giving station there and people can make donations to the nonprofit of their choice, one of which will be the library. So it's a good opportunity for us. They have encouraged, if any of you are interested in attending, you may do so. So it's May 23rd, Hagedorn Event Center. It's the celebration of philanthropy. And I will warn you, tickets are $60. That's something to keep in mind. So anyway, good opportunity for us and it was a welcome surprise.
Michael, do you have that you can email to me so I can let my board know those details?
Yeah, pretty much the email I sent you is all I have.
Okay,
So if you want to forward that on.
okay. Thank you.
Is it possible to put a Facebook post? So if there are other friends of the library who would like to attend that and donate through that, might be an engaging.
Just an intention. We have a
Yeah.
place to
Yeah.
donate there.
Yeah.
Good to send it out.
Good to collaborate on that anyway, too.
Thank you, Michael. On to our other reports. Ayla, do you have anything you'd like to report as our student representative?
Yes, well, I think I can speak for everyone when I say I'm super glad it's finally getting warmer. I've been reading a lot more, sometimes outside. I think I have like 24 books checked out right now. So need to read those. And the team programs just started back up again last week. It's super fun to get to do those again. We still don't have video games on Friday because the computers don't quite work yet, but they work, just the program doesn't work. So we played some board games, which was fun. And I'm super excited for the remodel of the teen zone that'll be coming up with the grant we just got. And then other news in teen world, I think most teens, myself included, are starting to get summer jobs. So fingers crossed that they call me back.
Thank you so much, Ayla. Friends of the library report, Michael.
Yes, friends met yesterday and following up again on Aspen Discovery. There was some doubt that CIN was going to purchase it as a consortium. So I did reach out to the friends, not at this last meeting yesterday, but the previous one last month. The library budget could only get us to a certain point if we were going to go alone, pay that $12,000 onboard fee. But the friends did very generously agree to foot the rest of the cost if in the event we needed it. It turned out we didn't. CIN has decided to sign a contract as a consortium. But again, friends really stepping in there and providing support when we need it. Very grateful for that. That's about it. Yeah, pretty slow otherwise.
Thanks. And the library foundation report, Holly.
Yes. I'm happy to report we have a new board member. Her name is Charlene Matheson. She lives in Hayden. She was living in Sandpoint. She's a realtor. So I'm going to use her for all my help with sponsorships for events. So she can pull her bankers and I don't people and those kind of things and fundraising sponsors. She attended our last meeting last week. She fit in well. Ann and Susan are going to go to Westridge Elementary School in Post Falls in early May, give out the Costa Rica Jimmy book. And there's another group from Apple coming down and going on the trail, the Jimmy Trail, and it's also going to be reading the original book for them and giving them a surprise book as well. So that'll be fun. I don't know if anybody's heard about the Monday night dinners that was kind of midtown, gentleman, should write his book, that started in the back of his backyard, just to get the community together. His name's Adam Schulter. And, he had 100 to 200 plus community people coming, bringing side dishes, and he do the entrees. You put your phones down, you don't talk about politics, don't talk about anything, it's just getting to know each other. So he was my neighbor before I moved and had attended one of those, and he came and wanted to know if we could do something together, just as a community. He also has a book that he produced of all his photos. He went all over the world taking pictures of people that were just in their normal life. So we'll be selling those books as well and getting a percentage. Anyway, it's scheduled for Monday, of course, May 13th in the pavilion. And we'd love everybody to come if you'd like. We're gonna have live music, and so we're gonna do a few raffle items. And we've got quite a few sponsors here, and Pilgrim's Market, Jeremy Johnson Brewery is doing some things, donating some things. So we'd love you to join us. It doesn't cost anything. Bring a side dish if you'd like. Give $10 for the live music. So it's not going to be a huge fundraiser for us, but it'll be more like a fundraising and community. You're welcome to attend, and I'll remind you as it gets closer.
And what is the time?
It starts at 5:30,
Okay.
from 5:30 to 9:30,
And it's May,
May 13th. And the city has graciously charged us the full amount that they usually do for the pavilion, so that was nice. Also have a novel destination presentation, June 13th. David Kilmer will be talking about his travels to Argentina. And if you've heard him present before, he's very entertaining. He did his one book, only we had the author event at the pavilion a couple of years ago. And then he was here, the sailboat race to Alaska last year. So it should be a really good presentation. And that's again, June 13th, that's 7 o'clock.
I was looking to add these to my calendar, and I tend to find all my community events through Facebook, and I didn't see these on there.
Well, they are just, well, other than Monday night dinner, that should be on, because JD does all those postings.
Okay.
I don't do any of, I just give her, she creates the posters. And then she puts them on social media. The novel destination has not been created yet. I'm waiting for David's photos.
Sure.
So if it's when it gets closer, if you still don't see it, let me know. She does a good job of doing all that social media stuff that I don't do very well. That's all I have.
Thank you, Holly. There's nothing listed under our unfinished business, so we will move to new business. We have a number of policy updates in relation to Idaho code. And I know that is also why we invited Randy Adams. So would it be appropriate for us to have some question and answer with Randy Adams before we have any motions on these?
Not parliamentary.
Okay, Jared.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'll just explain, while these are all action items, that was just in case.
Okay,
I expect today will mostly just be discussion. So the idea was to just lay out all of the options on the table and feel through them and discuss them and figure out maybe for the May meeting, which direction we're heading, give me some more feedback so that at the May meeting, we might be in a position to make action on a few items. But today I put action item, whenever I'm in doubt, I just put action item just in case, but today I imagine it's more discussion.
so then maybe it would be appropriate for us to have a motion regarding those
I
policies.
don't think so. We don't intend to vote on it.
You could table.
You could table it. You could make a motion and then table it.
Right,
Or amend it. and do
yeah,
all kinds of
that's why
things.
I
Yeah.
wasn't sure, because I thought we were more collecting information today. So,
Yeah,
and
so
let's, okay, then let's proceed without a motion at this point, and okay. Got Randy available to us?
would you like me to kind of walk it through?
Yes,
it
please,
first?
that'd be
Okay.
that.
Is it gonna come up on the screen too?
Introductory.
I can minimize that.
This was.
That's good.
Okay. So there's 4 policies that we've outlined. That might need some attention. So that the first one up is kind of the big one, the material review policy. So in the new law, this is very much a focal point of it, that we need to rework our policy, a material review policy, as well as the form. So what we've got here is we've reworked it quite a lot, and it very much mirrors what is required by the law. We had a material review policy before, as you know. I would say that this one, we're kind of shifting it more towards to suit the requirements of this law. It's moving away from how it originally was framed. So we are keeping it pretty open. We will have a form that's readily accessible for the public. If they believe we have materials that are harmful to minors, they can fill that form out. They can have a conversation with staff first, but they don't have to either. So the procedure is that they fill out the form, submit it to library staff. The form will be promptly provided to library director or designate. And I'm reminded that the law gives a 60-day time frame. Once the form has been submitted, we need to work to that time frame. So step 2 is after submission of the material review form, we will send the patron an acknowledgement, as well as copies of the library's material review policy and materials selection and collection development policy. The copy or copies of the material in question will remain available to the public until we come to a decision. So cut out number 3, so coming down to number 4, the library director or designee will consult, basically will consult with knowledgeable professionals. So the staff that we have who selected materials or are familiar with that particular subject matter, we will come to a decision collectively among the staff, reviewing each material according to the criteria outlined in the material selection and collection development policy and all applicable state and federal law. We will make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees within the 60-day timeframe after the receipt of written notice. Then so we're still working that 60 days. The first board meeting that comes up during that 60 days, we will have the Board of Trustees consider all the documentation collected. You may accept public comments and lead up, and you will make a final decision on the question at hand. So what to do with the material, to relocate or to leave it where it is. The person who submitted the written notice will be informed of the date of the meeting, and they can present information at that, additional comments about the material in question at that meeting. And once you make your final ruling, you will send a written summary to the person 60 days after receiving the notice.
I have a question. At the very beginning, said that they wouldn't need to talk to staff before they made a formal complaint about an item.
Yes.
Just as my experience as a teacher, sometimes parents would come in and they would have a question about something. And what they're questioning isn't covered under the law, or what they're worried about isn't something we can address. We need to redirect them to some other area where they, or maybe sometimes if we just explain what is meant by whatever is occurring that they're concerned about, they go, oh, I didn't know that. And they appreciate the communication. Sometimes we can give them information that spells out or whatever, so it's clear, and they walk away. I'm just wondering if they don't have to talk to anyone, if they will sometimes begin that laborious process when it maybe they wouldn't find it necessary, and they might be glad too, because then they don't have to fill out the paperwork and so on. Not to deter anyone in any way, but just because sometimes there just needs to be dialogue.
And that's why we always strongly encourage that they do have a conversation with staff first, because there have been times when I think we've all had conversations with patrons. They've aired their concerns, we've listened, we've kind of given our point of view, and it's resolved.
So I don't want that to change. And that number one thing you said would be that they didn't have to, they could just submit a complaint.
Well, Randy and I discussed this.
Randy, tell me why this can't work.
The new ordinance, the new
Yes.
statute does not require any preliminary step. It just gives the right to file a complaint. And my concern is if we make that mandatory,
I see.
we could be seen as discouraging making a formal written complaint. So I don't think we can require it. I think we can recommend it. We can offer it.
Okay,
But
so if
if-
it's in our paperwork that we recommend it, maybe then that would be something.
Or offer, it, yes.
And this particular part of the statute, will it hold up in the court system? As it is written, will it be able to stand on its own feet?
Very possibly. It is not a statute that prohibits any material, any particular material. It only is requiring where you put certain material. And so it's not really a violation of the First Amendment. It's hard to tell what a court will do. I have been at this a long time and I've been wrong sometimes as to what a judge will do, as Steve can verify. But you know, I feel fairly confident that the current courts will uphold the majority, if not all, of this statute.
I have a question on number 5. I had to read it several times and maybe I'm just not understanding what's correct. Is that you can present it with the documentation and there can be public comment. How does the public know what the documentation is even saying? And then they go on the person who submits it and so it just was confusing as far as the process.
Yeah,
I would think that any documentation that is considered by Michael or whatever that preliminary function will be part of the packet. The packet that comes to the board, which I believe would be public.
That's
Right,
And is published or posted.
but the public can respond to that documentation at the meeting,
During public comment, that's,
but they haven't had it yet.
well, I don't know when, I don't know,
before the meeting.
yeah, I don't know when
The
it's
whole packet
posted.
is published, okay. That answers my question.
all right. Any other questions about this, or I'll move on?
I have a question. The proposed material review form, I think, needs a lot more additional questions. We need to know if the person complaining is the parent or the legal guardian. We need to know when the minor obtained the material.
I think both those questions are in there. And so I don't have a copy of that.
Are you a minor parent or legal guardian? Yes or no? Did you obtain the material or was it available at Berlin Public Library? Yes or no?
You have a different copy that doesn't say that, Steve?
Let me see, sorry.
Do you, would you rather it say, are you, oh, no, that's.
Yeah, you need to know whether it's the minor complaining or
Oh, I see.
And we need to know, rather than summarizing the concerns, we need to know why the person thinks the material is obscene under the definition of obscenity that's included in the form. And I think we also need to continue to ask the complaining person whether they've actually read the material in its whole.
Yeah, Randy and I did have a conversation about that too. And
You can ask it. It's not required by the statute. The question is whether the material fits within the definition, not whether somebody has read it or not whether somebody has checked it out or
No,
not even why they think it's harmful. That may be helpful to the board, but ultimately the decision is yours, whether it's harmful to minors or not. And then ultimately it would be the court's decision.
right, but in determining whether it certainly helps to make a judgment call if we know what the complaint actually is, rather than if somebody saying, well, I think this book is inappropriate, or I think this book is harmful to minors. The question is, why do you think so? Some people might say, well, it contains a graphic depiction of something, but the whole book might be about, human sexuality and the problems that minors encounter with it, and without knowing specifics, we're kind of operating in the dark. And
You certainly
I think it's a disservice to the patron of the complainant when we're evaluating material without them not knowing why. For instance, if we say, no, we don't think this material needs to be moved, I think the person who made the complaint needs to know why. And that would be in response to their specific complaint about the material.
And you could almost have a box that said, when I reviewed this material as a whole, I found that it contained, and check so you would check a box to say, I reviewed the material as a whole, hoping that they have looked at the whole book and that what they found particularly offensive. And that's one of the criteria, right, for material review.
Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah, I agree.
I don't think you could require them to answer those
No.
questions before you review.
But you could ask.
You can ask.
Yeah. Number 5. Sentence 2. I thought it should just say the Board of Trustees instead of it will. Clarify. Is that right? That,
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
I also noticed the word may in that. So that means you don't need to require it as trustees. May give,
You never have to require public comment.
no, and may accept, we may accept the public
Right.
comment. So in other words, if we decided we didn't want to,
It's art for argument whether we have public.
I know. Is there a reason that? May is,
Public comment is not required. You cannot on the content of the speech, you either have to forbid all of it or accept all of it essentially. The city of Coeur d'Alene, the city council has decided to accept public comment on most everything.
So you're saying you have 60 days? I thought it was a statute required 30 days.
60 days.
We've got.
Total.
It was changed.
Again, another most recent version.
And I had a confusion that I assume was from not looking at the final version of this too, that at one point there was talk of having a review committee and.
That was another bill.
Okay, so
Yeah, that was a Senate bill, I
Okay.
believe.
yeah, I had assumed that was removed when looking at this, but with the process of it going through the legislature, I wasn't entirely clear on that.
Okay, we'll move on. I'm thinking back to the form. I think, Steve, would you like to draft
Sure.
some additional questions for that? That'd be helpful for next time for sharing.
And just as a point of clarification in my mind, in the last 4 years, how many times have we had books brought before the library for consideration?
2 books, several complaints about the same 2 books, but 2 books.
Official complaints.
In 4 years.
Yeah, last 4 years, since I have.
We didn't have any before that, 0.
Okay.
I have a question on what you brought up on number 4 about, I think we have knowledge of the due diligence and the work that you do, Michael, when you mentioned knowledgeable professionals and you mentioned or referred to the committee, and as an outsider not knowing the process, I wonder if people would read that and question, what does he mean by knowledgeable professionals? Who is that? And I thought that maybe could use a little clarification or expand, a little more expanding on that part.
I mean, could it just simply be the library director doesn't able to consult with relevant stuff? Because that's ultimately who I'm going to be talking to.
Right.
In other words, if it's children's library, it would be the children's librarian, but if it was the young adult, it would be the young adult librarian.
But I mean, there's a lot of overlap
Yeah.
between the work they do. There's Melissa Searle as well. She's selecting for the children's collection. So there's a number of different staff are involved.
And my intent was to not necessarily require you to limit it to library staff.
Oh, I
If you
see.
can get outside opinions, outside consultation. And it should be somebody who is knowledgeable about the area or a professional, as opposed to
I see.
someone who works at Subway. Although you do need to also determine what the community standards are through your investigation.
Good to have that option. So you might want a psychologist or counselor or something. Would say, or an attorney. Well, we have access to an attorney for all things.
Right, but that'd be included under knowledgeable professionals, where if we said relevant library staff, that would not necessarily include me. Okay.
And the idea would be that the report that is given to the board would identify those that you
Who
consult.
served.
All right, moving down to material selection, collection, development policy. Not a lot changed here. Just other than, so we've got to go down to the 5th page in your packet. And it's under censorship. And it's the 3rd item. So just we had all the specific codes that were formally referenced. We've narrowed that down to the 18, 15, 14 obscene materials definitions, just to make it abundantly clear. That's what we are in this instance. And then the other update was we had a rather old, I don't know, reference to the Miller test effectively. So I decided to update that to what the US Department of Justice is currently displaying on their website under the Citizens Guide to US Federal Law Obscenity.
Under number 4, I think rather than saying should be, it should say shall be excluded.
Oh,
You know, we're not intending to. Intending to have obscene materials in the library, so we should say it shall be excluded.
all right, so that's what we got there. Loan policy. So a couple of additions here. The first one, so it's on page 7 of your packets. Under the residence category, number 2B. Over the years, we've made it a lot easier for parents to sign their kids up for library cards, specifically because we're going out to schools now, we're going out to daycares, the parents aren't there, the kids are engaging with local library in some way or another. We're getting teachers bring their classrooms here for field trips. So we just tried to make it a lot easier. So we were sending application forms home to parents to get filled out, get signed, and then returned. So we're thinking we might have to stop doing it that way and make it a case where the parent has to physically be here at the library to sign their child up for a library card, recognizing, in that way they can talk to staff. They can feel out the process and get a good idea of what they are signing up to, rather than just a form with lots of fine print. They have a person in front of them explaining what this means, and also receiving the parent and caregiver guide. I think that's what we call it, that we give all new minor parents, or the parents, legal guardians of minors who sign up for library cards. So it states exactly the parameters of the library cards, how to use it, how to instate restrictions, that kind of stuff. So it makes it harder on the one hand, but it also really educates parents, guardians as to what this means when they sign their child up for a library card.
So what if we have the parents sign a release of liability when they apply for the library card for the minor child? If the library card is going to be in the name of the minor child only, that means the parents presumably aren't going to be with the child when the child wants to check out books. So they should be releasing the library from any liability if the child inadvertently checks out a book that the parent disapproves of.
But they can't do that. Parents can't give up, parents can't give up their authority over their child.
Right.
They can't.
They can give up.
Oh, in court.
They
but
can give up the right to sue the library.
But how could they sue the library? They are the only ones that can decide what their children check out. We don't operate in loci parentis.
Now, the law says that if a minor obtains material, which means get, acquire, or secure, then the parent has a cause of action against the library. Okay? So if we're saying that the parent can give the child the right to check out books without supervision, then the parent should relieve the library of any liability, because we're not.
The card doesn't say that, though.
It should, though. That's my recommendation.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think we want to go there, Steve.
Why not?
This is a new idea.
It's a new idea. Yeah, you can always release the library from liability. So we're asking the parents to release us from liability because they're the ones that have the cause of action against the library. They're the ones that are given this cause of action by the legislature. They release us, then they don't have that right to sue anymore. That's the point.
I'm not sure we're on the same page.
No, I don't think we are here.
Yeah,
I'm saying what the law says is if my minor goes and gets a book that is eventually deemed to be obscene, then the parent has a right to sue the library.
oh, and that's the 60, but they have to go through the 60-day process.
Nevertheless,
Yeah, I see what, in that path.
we're saying if you're gonna allow your child to go unsupervised into the library, and maybe that child would actually go in the adult section and try and check out an adult book, we shouldn't be held liable for that, and the parent has to release us. Now, if the parent doesn't want to sign that, then the child shouldn't be able to get a library card in his or her own name.
Okay, so now I have to go to you, Randy. How in the world could this hold up in court? In the history of public libraries, not school libraries, that's totally different. They lump them both together in this legislation, which I don't think they should have ever done because they're two completely different animals. Schools operate in loci parenti. Public libraries do not anywhere in the United States. Help me understand how they can usurp and change the law that now the library has the authority over their child when the parent isn't there.
I don't think that's what Steve is saying.
Well, he says we have to get them to sign a release.
No,
but we
he's,
don't-
he's saying, make that an option. That if a parent makes a decision that they don't care what material their child looks at,
Mhm.
then they sign a document that says if their child actually does get that material, they are not going to exercise the right under this statute to sue the library. Because the parent has already released the library from any liability for giving that material to the minor. That's what he's saying. And so it's not, the library is not acting in loco parentis. It is simply asking the parent to forego a right under the statute voluntarily. They don't have to sign it. But if there are parents in the community that want to allow their children unfettered access to the library, they can sign something to say that they won't sue the library for violation of this statute.
So this statute puts the burden of supervision of the child on the library instead, and it changes the in loco parenta. That's what I'm saying.
No, maybe you're misunderstanding the term.
Okay, help me.
And local parentis means the library is acting as a parent.
Right, which the school libraries do.
But we do not.
Right.
And so we're saying, because we do not, we want you, the parent, to be responsible for your child's reading. And therefore, if you give the child the right to check out any book in the library, we're not liable. We want them to.
But isn't that a
acknowledge it.
given?
No, it's not.
Not under this law.
No, this statute has changed what you're talking about
Right, that's,
to some degree.
that's exactly what I was talking about.
And what you're talking about is common law. It is not in the law anywhere.
Okay,
And so the state can change that. And
that's the answer I needed, Randy.
Yes.
I didn't know that it was common law as opposed to state law.
Yeah.
Now I'm clear.
So then,
Thank you.
if the parent says, no, I'm not gonna sign that, then the child doesn't get a library card in his or her own name.
It has to be in the parent.
It has to be in the parent's name, and the parent supervises what books the child can check out. Because they're library.
Essentially what we're already doing, that a parent has to sign when they sign up for a library card, that, I'm giving my child permission to access library materials with this card. This just adds legal clarity to that. Yeah, it's like one step further.
I'm not sure if it would actually protect us under the statute though, because I don't think the statute actually requires someone to have a library card.
No, but
That's
And
true.
that's,
At least that
that's
one
point.
facet of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it only covers one facet of it. I agree. But there's other steps that we can take and beyond that. I mean, that would just be like one level so that the
Right.
parents know right off the bat that library is not responsible, they're responsible. And they're giving up any rights to claim anything against the library if they, if their child checks out a book that they didn't want them to check out. That doesn't, I agree, that doesn't address the problem of if a child goes into the stacks and looks at a book and puts it back. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean the child has obtained the material under the definition, Oxford Dictionary definition of what it means to obtain material, which is get, acquire, or secure. So did the child get material, or did the child acquire material if they look at a book and put it back on the shelf? Maybe, maybe not. So under the broader definition, that doesn't cover all circumstances. So then we need to,
But it would, at least, all these things that we're doing, options for the cards, so restricting children's cards or offering to restrict children's cards, it eliminates the need to do that.
because a parent, if you have a 16-year-old child, you want to have the child be able to access any material in the library. But
Well, and
many parents wouldn't do that.
when we look at the number of complaints that we've had about materials in the library in forever, most parents kind of look over what their kids check out from the library and realize that's their responsibility as a parent, and they know. And if kids don't want their parents to know, they will figure out a way to get the material by having their friend get it or some other way. There will always be a way that kids can, and especially with the internet, they can get anything that they want to see, whether their parents know about it or not. So we want to make parents feel comfortable that are worried about what their children are going to see. We also want parents that want their children to be able to explore learning and material and education. And they'll filter out and say, I'm not sure I want you to read that now. Let's talk about it tonight. And then you do that later and discuss why you don't want to look at it. Parents do that all the time. So I think the majority of families, that's kind of the way they feel, but we're protecting a part of our population and we're trying to honor that, figure out a way to make this all work so that it works for everybody.
And so the second part of that, the broader definition, which would be if the child pulls a book out of an adult section and looks at it, doesn't check it out, you say we would, it's just a suggestion. I'm not necessarily saying we should do this, but you just require parents to accompany minors in the library.
That seems to be addressed in later areas of this policy.
Which is a horrible idea
Well, I think so too. but
because
it may be necessary.
we need children to be able to be in the library as much as they want to be in the library and that it's a happy place. And, we have 10% of our population is homeless. We have people that are in poverty and they don't have transportation. They're not going to be bringing their kids. We're going to lose a huge part of our children population's access to the library. So please let's not do something that makes it a police state for parents and their kids in order for them to learn in the library and enjoy and celebrate this wonderful opportunity that they have.
But if a child can go in an adult section and see something that many parents might say, I don't want my child looking at that book. How do you police that? Because this law says we have to police that.
Well, we have to
So then, yeah,
have a system, but there is no way that the staff can be policing every minute of every day for kids, they can slip in and slip something out so quick and I mean, you can't supervise every second to,
But the library will not be responsible if a kid does that, because they still have to give 60 days notice. You still have to make a decision. And if you decide that that book is appropriate, or it does not fall within the definition, then it can stay on the shelf and it doesn't matter whether the kid pulls it off or not. But if you decide that it needs to be moved, that's when you have the issue. But you're not liable from the beginning. You have to be given notice first.
and it's more likely that if it's in the adult section, that's where it belongs. So in that part of the library, if a kid is in the adult section, the book is in the section where it belongs. Unless it's some bizarre thing that our library would never purchase. You know, we wouldn't waste our money on something that was fitting
What's
those
the
definitions.
question?
Do you have any comment or feedback on Steve's idea to include a parental release on the application form?
Well, releases have a spotty history in terms of whether courts enforce them or not. I think it's a good suggestion to look at. And in fact, the statute says that the library has to take reasonable steps to prevent a objectionable book from getting into the hands. So first you have to find that a book is objectionable. Then you have to find whether the library has taken reasonable steps. That may be a reasonable step. It may be a reasonable step to put it in a room. You know, there's lots of things the library board can do once a book has been determined to fall within that definition. But this statute does not require the library to go through its entire collection and decide what is and is not appropriate before there is a challenge.
Yeah, that was one thing that confused me in reading the statute. So if something is brought before the board and we find it is not harmful to minors, it goes back on the shelf where it was, and someone who thought it was harmful to minors, then they would not have grounds for.
No, they would then have to go to court to
Okay,
have a
so,
court determine
okay, so.
that the library was wrong in keeping the book
Okay.
generally available.
All right, and also if another library in the state of Idaho found that material was harmful to minors, but that book had not been challenged at the Coeur d'Alene Library, would that be a problem if that one were on our shelves?
No, because again, in order for the library to be liable, they have to give you written notice that they find that the book is objectionable, and you as the library board would make that determination.
Okay.
You're not bound by what another library does. You would be bound by what a court in Kootenai County does, or by what the Idaho appellate courts do, but nothing else.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, that was one part that was very confusing as a layperson reading the law.
It is a strange law. It's unlike any other.
Okay, so I'll come down to the minor card restrictions. So we've got option one, which is to restrict all across the board, blanket. This is one option. Option one, blanket, restrict all minors cards to what we've designated as the juvenile and young adult collections. And then in the instance where a minor wishes to check out a title from the adult collection, then they would need their parent to do it on their card. Option two is to same concept, but an option, not applied across the board. It is something parents may sign their children up for. Similar to what the Community Library Network has done with their minor restricted cards, a little different though. Theirs is structured a little bit differently. I'm suggesting we don't quite take that road. we're saying that a minor card can access the minor collections, which is juvenile and young adult. Option 3 is to not do anything at this stage. So maintain library cards as they are for minors, which have no restrictions. Steve has offered a 4th option, so that's on the table as well. I think what Steve's suggesting, and Brandon might have a comment, would navigate this particular aspect of the policy.
What was it? I'm sorry, I was,
Would you say that Steve's, what Steve offered is a 4th option?
it is an option, as Steve mentioned, it doesn't cover everything, and so it would have to be done in conjunction.
Right, and none of these, it's the same problem. None of these only apply to items that are checked out.
Right. And I do want to point out that, the statute in section 3A doesn't limit it to obtaining a book. It says that they have to prove that the institution gave or made available material harmful. So that's on the shelf, generally available to the minor is making it available.
So,
I disagree with you.
And Steve disagrees with me a lot.
Section 3 says a minor who obtains material, then it has a cause of action.
And then what is the cause of action? What do they have to prove?
Well, they have to obtain the material first,
they have to have it in their hands somehow.
somehow.
Then what does the made available mean? You gotta give
I
it,
have no idea.
you gotta give effect to all parts of the ordinance.
Okay, so,
So we can disagree, because I think this or statute will probably go to the courts.
yeah.
Undoubtedly.
So, if people that want to restrict their children from entering the adult section of the library and looking at any materials, they can so stipulate, and it would be on their library card, that they're not allowed. We could do that?
Yeah, so,
That's one of the-
yeah,
Yes.
it's one of the options.
I-
Cohort is robust enough. Our library,
Figure out-
integrated library system is robust enough that we can implement restrictions on certain parts of the collection to certain card holders.
So
Yes.
then, if there was some concern, if a student said, I need help, I need to look up how Henry Ford developed blah, 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 and it's not in the young adult, and so there. The librarian would have to say, I need to see your library card, and if it had a restriction, they'd have to say, I'm sorry, you'll have to get your parents to do that because they've made a restriction on your card. If they didn't have that restriction, then the librarian could help them find the information and all would go on according. Now, that doesn't mean that there couldn't still be a complaint about something, of course, because that could still happen. But at least that's allowing the parents that don't want their children looking at material in the adult section to have a way, to have a filter for that. Right? They're going to be able to try to have some more supervision over what their children are looking at or checking out or whatever. And the families that want to give their children the freedom to go look up whatever in the adult section could roam about and look at the material and check it out, and their parents will have not restricted it, so they could do that. Is that correct?
Yeah, in a nutshell.
One of the options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're not making any decisions, we're only
Right.
discussing. What are you thinking, Charlie? I want to know. what
I
you're
just,
thinking.
as far as like where we've gotten to so far on the proposed, possibilities for policy change, I think that the, changing the application process to requiring a parent to physically be there gives us the opportunity to, provide them with a caregiver's guide and make sure that they're signing, make sure they're the ones signing, like it's not just getting anybody to sign. The parent's consent to, and understanding that their child has, permission to access any library material with that card. I think the combination of that That's my, with, option 3, which is, not further restricting minor cards, probably is in the best spirit of the library's mission. Providing materials that fill the needs of all members of the community. It allows parents to monitor, their young children. It allows an 8th grader who's doing a report on, bears to access nonfiction book about bears in our adult library, which they should be, accessing important information. So I think the combination of those things, is best in the spirit of the library. But I understand that we're trying to.
And this is a little bit getting in the weeds, but it's just an example of something we could do to help make it easier for families. Is if we had library volunteers at all the grade schools at the beginning of the year, when parents physically come in to register their children for school, and there was one place where they could sign up for a public library card and sign it right there. That would help us not lose those kids we don't want to lose.
Yeah, that is the one problem, is they would make
Yeah.
that a lot of field trips, it's
Yeah.
part of their thing, especially in early grades. That's
Right.
2nd graders, that they can come in and they have their signed library cards and they get their first library
We
card.
still would have the ability to hand out the paperwork for those kids to take home. But at least we might capture some of those that it's more difficult. And the only time that parent ever shows up for anything is that first day when they register their child. And there's a lot of families that are like that.
Our outreach.
Just maybe they have their work schedule. It can be for a million different reasons. Maybe they're not well and they don't go out much. So, it's hard to know, but it still is a reality of a lot of our families we don't want to lose.
I'm so sorry. I have to go. I have to get to a class.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
I was curious reading through these options, how you would address current card holders and how you would change their restrictions or allow parents an opportunity to sign a release, or I could see that being very challenging.
Yeah,
New card holders, you have some clear paths, but current card holders.
So there's a couple of options. We can do a blanket block of all minors cards. So West Bonner Library District, we did something very similar about a year ago. So they, and I think it was a similar, like, waiving parents' liability. It was what their attorney suggested at the time, although it was prior to this law. About a year ago, they blocked all of their minors cards, sent emails to every single email address they had on file for those cards, called them when there were no email addresses. It took a lot of time for the staff to get to everybody, but they eventually got to everybody, and it required that they come into the library, sign this release form, and then they would reactivate their minors card.
They couldn't do that online. I mean, I signed 50 release just to get, so that I won't sue the school if my kid gets hurt, and I do this all online, and there's many releases that I
Easily,
do
but
virtually.
we didn't have the means. I think we don't have the means to do
Yeah.
that.
But that would be, getting a signature online would be it wouldn't work for all families because they don't have that kind of computer, but would that be legal if we did it that way?
It could be legal, but how many kids forge their parents' signature?
Yeah, I know.
Well, that you have to log into your adult library account, and is there a way to do a maintenance on your account online?
No.
Okay.
You would have to notify. So for example, when your card expires, the cards are valid for 2 years. They expire every 2 years, and we mainly do that just to make sure that you're still an active patron, and B, we have the correct contact details on file. So we send out reminders, emails to those cards, or phone calls in some cases, to those cards that are expiring, and then we just confirm that they still, we have the correct details on file, and therefore they're active user. It will be a similar scenario to that.
It'll get figured out. It is gonna be. a huge
Yeah, I
burden
mean,
on
everything
them.
we do is gonna require work.
I think and the any steps that require a parent to come in and have to fill out paperwork in person is gonna be burdensome fun. I can see that being challenging.
We don't want it. I mean, I don't think that, well, I certainly don't want any more burden on families. I want
Right.
them to be here celebrating this wonderful space, everyone. But this is creating those obstacles that we have to honor. Somehow.
Are we ready to move on to the behavior policy? So that's, we've got several, you'll see several edits here. Randy provided a few edits as we went along. But the thing to really focus on is unattended minors, that section on page 11 of your packets. So we took a look at the ages that we would expect children to be accompanied while in the library. So first, number one, minors aged under 6 years of age must be directly supervised by a parent, legal guardian, or caregiver over the age of 18. So that's not unchanged. That's how it's always been. Number two, minors 6 to 13 years in age should be accompanied by a parent. So we up the age limit from 9 to 13 on that one. And notice it says should be. I would say this is a recommendation. Must for the under 6 years, kids under 6 years, this is should be accompanied by a parent, legal guardian, caregiver over the age of 14 in the building. And then we added this other piece, and again, this is to work in conjunction with maybe some card restrictions. Minors 6 to 13 years in age, accompanied by caregivers 14 to 17 years in age. So groups of minors effectively will be directed by staff to remain in the designated juvenile and adult.
So they can't go and look at material in the adult section. Why? Unless their family restricts them, why in the world would we not want to allow them to go and look at a book on airplanes in the adult section?
Because of this law.
Well, but if we have it set up the way you were talking about previously, the families that want that restriction would stipulate it, right? And then the families that say, I want my child to be able to roam the library,
But we're not going to know who's who.
well, it'd be on their card.
You don't have to show the card to get in the library.
Yeah.
No, but to check out books, they do.
Yeah, but what if they're just in there
Well,
doing research?
we're really gonna have a hard time. But I don't even know how we can do that. We don't have the staff to do that. We don't have enough staff that they can stand in the adult section of the library and police it all day long to make sure that from opening to closing,
I mean, that's true. I
that
think,
they didn't provide funding for staff in the libraries to do all this additional work.
Well, so
We've
maybe,
got to do it with the staff we have, whatever.
so maybe that's unreasonable.
It's very
They provide
unreasonable. It
funding.
is unreasonable.
But all we have
And
to
this
do
is the one that he said probably is gonna be challenged. So,
all we have to do is provide reasonable steps, so it could be that.
You can't do nothing.
Yeah.
You don't have to do everything.
right.
Somewhere in between is the sweet spot.
yeah, and these are, I guess we're coming in, like, this is the
It's
hardest we can
respecting the
get, like, this is
spirit, yeah.
the strictest we can get.
And that is going
into
to be-
the school.
Well, I certainly think it makes sense to have children under 6 years of age accompanied by a person that's given authority by their parents. That makes total sense. I have a problem with kids that are going to school not being able to, if they're riding their bike from Sorenson to their home, that, or for Nan, and they're going in, they're on their bike, they can't come down here and pick up some books after school or go to an after-school program while mom and dad are at work. I don't want our library to restrict children that are minors from being, and, to be able to come here and use the library. And my grandchildren would check out 7 books or 8 books or 10 books or 15 books a week when they were 6 to 12 years old. And they'd read them all and they're back to get a whole new pile, but they didn't always have, when they were with me, staying with me, they'd ride their bikes from my house down here and get their stack of books, put them in the basket, be back in 3 days to get another stack. I don't want that to change unless their parents wanted to change for for their children. Or they should be able to do that for their children. But I don't want to do it for the rest of the children. So can we do that? Is there a way we can do that?
I don't know. I mean, it is a positive duty on the library to not make available or allow minors to obtain these materials. So what Steve suggested is a waiver for those who want to let them. What you're suggesting is an opt-in, which I don't think
No,
meets the library. Well, you said you want parents to opt in to
Restriction.
the restricted section. of the
yes,
library.
I did say that.
And I don't think that meets the intent of the statute.
So it has, but you think we might be able to do the reverse?
Possibly, yes.
Okay.
But again, it's incomplete and you've got to weigh what effort it's going to make on staff or put on staff versus the effectiveness of the policy. And I don't have any answers to that. And it may be something that you try something for 6 months and see if it works. And then have to change it or tweak it.
Yeah, and
Into
all of
something
these
else.
can be changed, they can be
Yes.
reversed, like, we can implement them, we can take them away, like, it's all, nothing's.
We're just brainstorming
Terrible.
at this point anyway.
I think your comment, if we removed the second sentence on number 2, would meet, Katie, what you are speaking of, that minors should not be asked to remain in only their sections. And yet in the words should instead of must. Because I think I prefer the word should.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just again, in the spirit of trying to keep our policy as close to the spirit of our library's mission as possible. You know, I do have a hard time with, especially junior high age children, things like that, where we do have just a lot of kids that are given freedom by their parents to ride their bikes around town in the summers, after schools, that come to attend our programs, that they come to, and 13 does seem old, especially if they can be watched by a 14-year-old. So, you know, 13, you know, and I know it's a hard one because we're just trying our best to change something, but, and using the verbiage of should is helpful, but I do feel like we're not feeling the needs of all of our community members if we're not allowing, you know, junior high age to be here by themselves or to access the adult collection for, you know, materials that are informational and very appropriate to have.
That's been my main concern is this section right here. 12 years old is usually 6th grade, almost 100%. And to like looking at my programming, I'm meeting like middle school and high school, you know, teen events. That's what I do. And I have a weekly like art club where half of my attendance is 12-year-olds. And they come together as a group. There's no parent. They walk here from the Lakes Middle School. And I mean, and to me, it's concerning to me that I will have to basically like kick them out, I guess. I don't know, like there's not exactly like a enforcement piece 100%, but it sounds, I don't know, it concerns me. I don't know what the answer is, but.
Most of these age recommendations are pretty arbitrary, right? I mean,
Yes.
so
The
you can
only
adjust them.
thing that the statute covers is minors,
Yeah,
18, under 18.
so we can adjust them anyway we see fit, we keep leaving how they were. we could play around with the age ranges. Right? Right?
Yes, I mean, as long as it's reasonable, as long as the library is meeting the intent of the statute.
Okay. So maybe there's one we need to think about.
Yeah.
And number 3, I must admit, when I looked at this again, if a minor 13 years old or younger is found unattended in the building, we'd take severe action. We'd try and call it contact to the parent, we'd try and, if that was unsuccessful, we'd call the police. Yeah, I'm really not sure about that. The 13 is too old for that. I think sticking with the original 9 might be better. And who was telling me? It's only once that that's ever really come up. Yeah.
I can tell a story from what I remember. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the gist of it is it doesn't really happen very often.
No.
I could see someone inappropriately using the library as a babysitter and dropping off kids too young to,
That's happened.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the one addition I wanted to question on number 3 is that if you did get to a situation where you had an unattended minor and you needed to call the police, or you needed to, and you hadn't been able to contact their parent, I did like that number 4 required that 2 staff members would stay with that minor or with the 15-year-old, but I would add that sentence maybe to number 3 as well. To say that that you wouldn't then just leave that 6-year-old wandering around until the police come, that someone would stay, 2 people would stay with that person until.
Okay, yeah.
I was just thinking that there's some space to meet in the middle too. There's a lot of room between 9 and 13, maybe 11. Sounds a little, I mean, it's silly, but an 11-year-old is going into middle school, not going into high school.
And I just,
But it's difficult.
I think there should be younger than that even. I mean, when kids can walk, according to the school district, they can walk 8 blocks back and forth to school unaccompanied, unsupervised, age 6 on. So why would we not let them, if their parents are saying, if you want to go to the library, it's okay. Why wouldn't we receive them to be at the library? We have after school programs that are special for them and good, great constructive activities. And the kids love it.
A child whose home is not a safe place and they need a safe place to be.
I was telling Michael, I tutored a girl that was homeless. And when we were in the building on Harrison, I was working on a graduate degree and I was in and out of the library picking up interlibrary loan all the time. And she was always there. She went there every day after school. If we stayed until the library closed. And I knew her because I tutored her. And so that was the first time for me to actually track a child, knowing the circumstance. And it was safe and it was dry and it was warm. And when she finished her homework, she was very well behaved. She read a book and then she went to wherever her family had deemed the place to be for the night. After she left the library, I didn't ever know that. And I never asked her. I felt that was invasive. But that gave me some insight into what libraries provide for children, grade school age children and older kids as well. I taught for 40 years and I never had a year that I didn't have homeless children. Never. And they told me I didn't ask. So I know that they find places to be that are safe. We have the Boys and Girls Club. We're grateful for that, but the library is a wonderful place for them to be. That's safe and fun. We don't want this law to ruin that somehow.
Okay, any other comments? Lots of food for thought. I think we can come back to the next meeting and regroup and so it's ready.
Yes, so this will be on our unfinished business next month.
Yeah. Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, with nothing further on that, our final action item is the fiscal year 2024-25 budget proposal. I'll entertain a motion regarding that.
I move we accept it as presented.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Michael?
So it's, you will notice it's a slight increase, but it's generally pretty flat. And that is kind of the advice that we're getting from city finance, from Troy Thompson, the city administrator. The city is still trying to catch up on some of the collective bargaining agreements that were agreed to over the past couple of years. Also, I'm sure you're aware, I mean, it's in the paper that the city is operating at a deficit, very much relying on the savings that have come from the police department. So the police department, they try their very best to be fully staffed, but it's a continual struggle. But the benefit of that, it's not a good benefit, but the benefit of that is they do save a lot, had a lot of savings year to year, and that does help plug the gap for the city. So that's all to say that we have been told to keep things pretty flat overall. So the only thing I'm really asking the city for in this case, I've moved some funds around just to cover accounts that are experiencing, for example, the courier, postage and courier seems to be hitting that ceiling, close to hitting that ceiling. The utilities, it's kind of creeping up there. We should start to see some savings from the lighting project, fingers crossed. So that's one thing to bear in mind. But mainly the thing I've asked for an increase for is library materials, because again, we're seeing an increase in costs of physical items, but that demand for digital items, so ebooks, the audiobooks, it's just ever increasing. So I imagine that a lot of those funds will go towards funding more ebooks, e-audiobooks, Libby, specifically.
10,000 enough more for those?
We could ask for more, but it's never enough. That's the problem.
Right.
I was curious about a lot of the insurances, the amount is down. And in my experience, that's not how insurance typically works.
So those categories, all of those payroll categories are pre-populated by city finance. I don't really have any control over those. So I'm going off what they predict insurance will be next year. And I do agree it's a little low, but they will adjust accordingly depending on what.
Okay.
And they self-insure.
Yeah.
There is no further discussion. The motion on the table is to approve the requested budget for fiscal year 2024-25 as presented. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. We have approved the requested budget for fiscal year 2024-25 as presented to us.
And so the next step is I meet with the city finance department, explain what our needs are, and then it goes forth to city council.
Is there any other new business someone wants to bring before?
I just have just a piece of information I wanted to share, not for an action at this point, and I talked to Holly about this. When Post Falls Library had their book sale, I went out to see if I could buy some books and support what they were doing. And I visited with Karen Yoder, who we've worked with on all kinds of projects with the county library system, and said, you know, I've been thinking about a way that Coeur d'Alene Library community might be able to support what's happened in Post Falls. I'm very empathetic to what's happened here.
And she had some plastic cards on the table with pictures of things they needed and what the cost was. And I said, would it make sense to do some kind of a shower for the Post Falls Library for some of the things that they need? And I see you're advertising what you need here, and people were sometimes buying to support those things. About September, that's when they expect to be fully back open again, but sometime around there, the Post Falls community will probably have responded as well as they can by then. And at that point in time, maybe the end of August or 1st of September, if we did some sort of an event where we might offer plastic cards that were left, that people could, as a group or individually, maybe purchase some of the things they still need to get back to where they were before the flood. Is this something that you would want to pursue or think about more, or not interested at all? Just thumbs up or thumbs down, pursue or not pursue? Pursue?
If they think that that is a good idea of a way to help them, then
Okay,
Yeah.
and she's the only one that I talked to, but it would be up to her then to share it with their board to just decide, you know, whether it's okay, but I didn't want to go any further until I had sense of where you were, and then we're gonna have to take it to the foundation board, because I thought maybe they could help us put on this little thing, whatever we're gonna, I thought I should call it a shower. But I think that the community of Coeur d'Alene is very empathetic to what's happened in Post Falls and would probably show up and support this and just be a good opportunity.
Good idea.
Okay. I
I
would
have
pursue.
no idea what monies.
Well, I saw one thing. I mean, this is just a for example.
Yeah.
They have a giant plastic piano. You've seen them advertised that you can stand on and place notes.
Huh.
And that was in the children's department. I think it cost $79. And that was something she had. All different prices of things, you know, all different kinds of things. But, you know, people could go together and